Well, hi everybody. Welcome to Cosmic Owl Astrology. I am Louise Eddington, the Cosmic Owl, and it's my great pleasure to have with me on my channel this time Dabney Lawless. I was on her channel a little while ago, and Dabney came on with Cassie and I for one of our political videos as well. And I wanted to have her back on because I really like her take on these things. So, Dabney is an evolutionary astrologer who trained with well-known author and astrologer Stephen Forrest, one of my favorites, over a 20-year period, achieving his master level apprenticeship certification, which is quite the achievement. She offers her clients a roadmap to navigate life's many ups and downs, and she provides tools and inspiration using the cosmos to help people find meaning and discover a true appreciation for the gifts that they have brought into this world. She's the current host for Oprah's Mercury Hour. I hadn't realized that on Sunday of the last Sunday of the month, and she has a great YouTube channel, Lawless Astrology, where she interviews people I'd never even heard of, and I'm like, how did you get them to come on your channel? So anyway, Nick Dagan Best, you had him on, and I'm like, I'm jealous. I want to talk to Nick. Anyway.
You know what it is, Louise? Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And I know that we have a lot of the same people that love my channel, love your channel, and we have a lot of crossover. So it makes me really happy to be here with you. But I will say, having someone like Nick on, and, some of the names that I get, it's literally just because I've had a career in PR and I'm a little fearless when it comes to just asking anyone. I'm like, oh, I like them. Let me ask if they'll come on. And if they say no or they ignore me, it's okay.
I'm 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 pretty fearless too, but I don't know why I hadn't thought to ask him. I might go. I might now
Maybe
ask
you
him.
should.
But anyway, we are going to talk today about the kind of what everybody's talking about in the astrology world. But we can always think of more, and say more and talk about more. And that is Saturn in Aries. And Saturn has just moved into Aries as we record this at the end of May and will be in Aries till September the 1st, I believe. And then will retrograde back into Pisces briefly and re-enter Aries when Saturn will then conjunct Neptune exactly at 0 Aries. So it's a really big deal, this, to be quite honest. So yeah, let's just riff on that then, Dabney. What are your first thoughts about this? I think people are probably starting to get a bit of an inkling of kind of what it feels like. What
Yeah. So I feel like it is hard to separate the Saturn and the Neptune.
Mhm,
And so, and the reason I say that is because we did have Saturn traveling through Pisces, and we've had
mhm,
Saturn travel or Neptune traveling through Pisces together in the past couple years, and kind of doing a dance. And it really has led to a little bit of where we are now, I feel like, which is kind of this confusion, this daze, this delusion, this, really not totally getting what we're bargaining for.
mhm,
Victimization, Pisces on the downside can be this tremendous victimization and grievances. And
mhm,
so when Neptune first went into Aries, it really did feel like a complete energy shift
mhm,
overnight. Now, we're still dealing with a lot of the things that we've been dealing with, but there was sort of like when we had this election and we had all the things that have been taking place, it just has been, overwhelming, and everyone felt a little helpless, like deer in the headlights, I feel like. And suddenly people started to get a little of their mojo back,
mhm.
right? Like it's
Yeah.
starting to feel like, and so now I think we've got the next chapter of that, which
Mhm,
is Saturn moving into Aries. And so there's two sides to Saturn and Aries. So if you look at Saturn being constriction and structures and building and kind of slowing down and patience, and accountability. These are all kind of Saturn words, right? But
Hmm.
Aries is like clarity and motion and action and getting things done and, me, myself, what do I need? So
Hmm.
the combination of these two, along with that Neptune and Aries, I feel like is just really opening the door to this next chapter.
I agree. Hmm.
And the Saturn in Aries truly has, I think it's going to be a story of two potentials, right? Saturn in Aries can be very authoritarian. It can be kind of austerity. It can be crackdown on, just like I'm going to be the police. I'm going to be the law. I'm sort of calling it like a new sheriff in town. But there's
Hmm.
also a new sheriff in town when it comes to accountability and bad behavior and shining a spotlight on this kind of trying to control people at all costs. And
Hmm.
so I think that there's going to be an increase in maybe authoritarianism, but there's also going to be an increase in rebellion against that. And people are going to really have their eyes open for the first time in a long time.
Oh, I agree. Because, another good word for Saturn in Aries is clarity. It's like, after the kind of confusion and murk of Pisces, it's suddenly like, oh, hits you like in the face kind of thing. People are starting to see what they couldn't see before. Of course, we can't separate it from everything else in the chart, I think. But so one of my favorite memes for Saturn and Neptune together, and also for Saturn and Pisces, is the image of this little man at the edge of the shoreline, kind of tapping in a nail to build a wall to stop the massive ocean coming back. There's an element of that, wouldn't you agree, of Saturn and Neptune together? It's kind of still, I think we're still in the phase of how do we really stop this kind of thing for those, that do not want the authoritarian takeover. What's your thoughts on that?
So, I was doing some research about Saturn and Aries and what was some of the things that were happening the last time Saturn was in Aries, which was in the late 90s. And
Mm.
this, specifically, and I'd love to talk about some of the other things, but one of the specific things was the movie Titanic was the biggest movie of the year.
Oh, there you go.
And so what I think is like there is this iceberg straight ahead. And
Mm.
I think that the iceberg has been there for a long time, but
Mhm.
we're just coming up on it. We are so close to it now that suddenly we see it.
Yes.
And I think that's what the Saturn and Aries will be. And what do you do when when the Titanic's going down? You grab a life vest. Grab your loved ones. You kind of recognize that there are ways to survive.
Hmm.
And that's a little bit of what the Saturn and Aries is to me is it's about survival, right? It's
Yeah.
about like, oh, okay. So I took things for granted. I can no longer take for granted.
Yes.
And sometimes, and you know this as an astrologer, Saturn transits are the transits that make us.
Oh, they are.
They're the ones that really show us who we are, what we're worth. They're not easy to get through, but once you do, people always say Pluto leaves you a gift, and I believe that, but Saturn leaves you with like you just know who you are so much better in so many ways. And
I,
you know
I'll,
it's important.
I'll never forget your teacher and mine, Stephen Forrest. I was lucky enough in my very early days as an astrologer to go to a weekend workshop with him. And Saturn was going through Sagittarius all over my massive Sagittarius stellium. And we all got a mini reading, and he just said, it's time for your great work. It's time to buckle down. What would you get to your deathbed saying, I wish I'd done that, if you didn't do it? Saturn's got that kind of, what do I really want to achieve? What's my legacy kind of thing? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But
No,
anyway.
you didn't at all. No,
Yeah.
no, please, absolutely, and always interrupt me because I'm constantly interrupting other people, and it's just because it's exciting and we're both Sagittarian energy.
Yeah.
But I think that it strips you bare
Mm.
so you actually know what's important and who you
Yes.
are. And
Yeah.
Saturn in Aries on a personal level, I think, is going to do that for many of us. And, you look and see which house it's in for you in your chart, and that will give you some clues
Mm,
about the area or, the aspects it's making, but that will give you some clues about the area in your own personal life where
mhm,
it will be taking place. But I think it's kind of like I always say to my son, like, spoiled kids aren't happy kids.
mm,
And I think that it's kind of like, okay, we've become spoiled. We've become, like lazy. It's sort of like, okay, no more
mm.
of that. You're
Yeah.
stripped down to what's important.
Mhm,
And when that happens, you have a more keen sense of self. You have a more keen sense of your responsibility in the world.
mhm,
And I think that that's something that's been lacking
mm.
when, and so there's the accountability piece. That's the kind of comeuppance piece too that comes with Saturn, because if you've been behaving badly,
And
Saturn is gonna, wrap the knuckles and say, it is absolutely time to course correct.
and it's that integrity piece as well. It's another good word for it as well, isn't it? I think, and you're right. As a society, we have, people are, become instant stars, or or they expect somebody else to do all the work for them, or something like that. Not everybody, of course. There are still people that, have take the responsibility on their shoulders. But my Saturn in Capricorn, I have Saturn in Capricorn in the first house, takes all the responsibility. And it's really hard to kind of make people do that. But I think this transit is going to say, you are responsible for creating your life,
Mhm.
your world, and your part in it. So I see it in everywhere. I'm involved in local politics a little bit as well, in Utah where I live, and I'm, a delegate just. But I also became first vice chair of a caucus because I thought I have to do something, towards what I want to see in the world. So it's not just about my work, it's about everything, and it's about supporting those that matter to me as well, my two kids and my husband, and probably letting everybody else look after themselves for a bit too. So
And
yeah.
and I think that there's a little of that, which is like the empowerment of
Mhm.
not being selfish,
No.
but understanding what's important to you. Because the Aries is the I am, it's the me,
Mhm.
but it's not the selfish me when it's in Saturn. It's the accountable me. It's
Mhm.
the what am I responsible for? What's important to me? How can I prioritize that?
Yeah.
And that also kind of leads me a little bit to there has just been this rise in um especially the past couple of years around the feeling that men are lost, men
Oh.
are lonely, the toxic the Tate brothers, like the manosphere and stuff. And it's so interesting because back the last time again when Saturn was in Aries was the Clinton Monica Lewinsky scandal.
Oh, right, of course. Yeah, yeah.
And there are several examples of
Mhm.
people being held accountable for bad sexual behavior.
Yeah.
Um, Aries is ruled by Mars, the sexual impulse.
Hmm.
And so there is this kind of being held accountable for just bad behavior when it comes to sexuality. And it's really funny because Saturn moved into Aries and the Tate brothers got indicted for
Hmm.
sexual assault in the UK. And, just a few weeks ago, they were cavorting around Miami and having a party.
I know.
So I think there is something about that also coming into play
Mhm.
where we are going to see more of people who have been celebrated
Mhm.
for these kind of transgressions.
And it's that kind of power over energy instead of set power from within, isn't it? It's thinking that you kind of have the power to just make people do what you want, kind of thing. In all areas, it's not even just the sexual areas, is it? It's and we're seeing it smack in our face everywhere. So anyway,
Yeah. Yeah. So I
yeah.
see kind of like a double, and this was the other thing that I kind of saw as a pattern is sort of the cult-like behavior that came
Mm.
out of all the Neptune and Saturn and Pisces.
Oh,
Uh, you know, there is kind of a either like doubling down and going all in to the point
mm,
of extremism, or there is a sort of waking up and leaving the cult.
mm,
So it's kind of like that personal choice. Like when you're getting cold water splashed in your face, are you going to just get angry and double down? Or are you
mm,
going to kind of be like, whoa, what was I thinking? That,
mhm.
there is a way out. And so I think that we're going to see both of those things. That's the
I agree.
interesting thing. Yeah. What
Yeah.
is your feeling about that Saturn in Aries?
Well, I kind of think we're seeing it already, both sides of it. I always describe let's call it the unhealthy side of it as clinging on by their fingernails, like, oh, we've got this power and I'm gonna hold on to it as much as I can, because I don't want to be held accountable. That's basically it, really, and either personally within your soul or by others. And then we are seeing the people starting to wake up, some people starting to say, that, whoa, I was kind of taken in by whatever, the manosphere or politics, all kinds of realms. I think people are realizing that, like the whole influencer thing.
Right, right. The
Yeah.
falsehood. Just I think anything that is like where you're looking for someone to save you or like looking
Mm.
for someone to be your idol, like I really feel like we did see a in all honesty, and this is maybe just my own, but collectively, I feel like the Piscean energy of the past 2 years was was a darker expression than
Oh,
I had hoped it would be, for sure. And so when I look back at, the last couple years of, the Biden administration and stuff, there's kind of like a denial of what's really happening.
yeah.
And that was very Saturn and Pisces because Saturn's like what's happening. Saturn's reality. Saturn's the structures and the boundaries that keep us safe in a lot of ways and that keep us moving in the right direction.
Mm,
But with Pisces, it just was like this denial,
yeah.
like what was looking right at was that iceberg, right? It's like the Titanic floating right in front of you, and you're just kind of like, oh, it's gonna be fine. We're good. No problem. Like we got this, and everyone around you is being like, iceberg, iceberg, and just kind of like, no, we're good.
Yeah.
And now I kind and now we have like this book coming out about Biden and we have, the judges saying, no, sorry, you don't get to like put tariffs on the whole world. Like, there's just sort of these Aries is waking Saturn back up, I think, a little bit and being like, get
Yeah.
off your tush and start holding
And
people accountable.
even to bring in the rest of the world, to some degree. I have a good friend in Kiev, and clearly I'm from Europe originally, so I have a very strong interest in what's going on over there as well, perhaps more than most Americans. But people are really starting to see that no, Putin really is a dictator who wants to take down the West, and he is going to keep going unless we do something to stop him. Now, certain people in charge don't have that point of view, but what's happened with somebody who won't stand up to Putin is he's bombing the shit out of Ukraine right now. Excuse my language, but he's escalating everything because he's trying to seize on the opportunity. And Kathy and I do those videos. I've been trying to tell anybody that will listen. I'm going, go and read Alexander Dugin's book. It's all laid out in there. He's followed that exact path of what he wants to do because he's another Saturn in Aries dictator type who just wants to grab all the power, build, and expand it. And so anyway, I could go on and on about that, but people
And
are
I think that
starting to
there's
see
something
it.
interesting too about, yeah, no, the sleepiness of just like, oh, the Americans will take care of it,
Yeah,
right? And now it's like, oh, the Americans are not going to take care of anything.
yeah, but
Like,
also, yeah, the Americans will take care of it, or also the fact that of some Americans thinking, why should we
Why
do
are we
this?
why should we take it right? No, totally. I
Yeah.
think that's what I think is interesting. And so like I don't think that Europeans in general, so people watching are like, oh, the Americans will take care of everything.
No,
I
no.
think there is this like collective reckoning of like, oh, we have to step up,
Yeah.
and that means people, that means other countries, that means everything where like things that we all took for granted.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's good or bad, right or
No.
wrong. I see that the world is so much more complicated
Hmm.
than the tribalism that we've been led to believe in.
It really is. Hmm.
And I think we're not going to be able to get through the next year
Mm.
without successfully, like where we can come out and say like, well, I'm okay, without really kind of taking that accountability in our
Mm.
own lives. And the more of us that take that accountability into our own lives and face the places where maybe we need to grow up,
Hmm.
we need to take action,
Yeah,
that's where we're going to, move forward collectively as well.
I agree. And that brings me to my next question, the thought I had. So, January the 20th next year, Saturn and Neptune, they'll both retrograde for a short while back into Pisces. I always think of that as a reminder of what we need to mop up and clean up. But Saturn will not move past Neptune, the modern ruler of Pisces, until January the 20th next year. So really see it as kind of a process of people kind of starting to get clarity and wake up. But I think we need to get past January the 20th next year for things to really change. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I'm not looking for a dramatic shift
Mhm.
overnight. I think that this year, to your point exactly, is a process.
Mm. Oh, definitely.
But I think within that process, we can all make incremental changes. I
Mhm.
think there are a lot of people out there, like in the political realm, who are predicting, like, impeachment or, this or that. And, I don't necessarily see that, but what I see is a tide turning.
Yeah.
And I think once that, and I feel like we've already seen it. And so once that happens, we can sort of more honestly face our identity crisis that
Yeah.
we're having in this country. And as we get more serious, I think there becomes that McCarthy moment where, during McCarthyism, where they said, have you no decency, sir? And it actually made a difference. I'm sure lots of people said that prior, but
Oh,
it
yeah.
wasn't the right timing. And so I think you're right. I think we have to get to that. 2026, I think, is going to be something so different.
Hmm.
But right now, we're just figuring out where we went wrong.
I agree. I really are. And that's globally for everybody
Mhm.
listening, but also for the USA. Where we both live, it's kind of a reckoning for the country as a whole, really, and it's not just the Republicans that are in power. It's about how we've let stuff happen. It's about the faults within the Democratic Party, all this. And this is very Saturn, I think, as well. This hierarchy thing. I don't know if you know that AOC wanted to be the chair of a powerful committee, Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, for those who don't know who AOC is. And it was like, no, it's Jerry Connolly's turn. He's served his time. That's very Saturn. So, no, he's going to be the chair of this committee. And then he promptly died. So now they're looking for another chair. He was a decent guy, but maybe.
No, my rep is in his mid 70s and has cancer. And,
Mhm.
always had a good track voting record.
Mhm.
However, he is not capable of meeting the moment. And
Yes.
I don't say that because of his age, because I think Bernie
No.
Sanders is meeting the moment. But I
Yeah.
do think some people have a lot more energy in their 70s than others. And, I think some people just are resting on this, what has been.
Mm.
Saturn is the Lord of time,
Yes.
and Aries is the brand newborn. Aries is spring. Aries is new. And so, especially with Uranus moving into Gemini this summer, there
Mhm.
is going to be youth. Like we
Oh,
had an empowerment and a rebellion of the youth, I think, to say, like, you have to move aside. We
yeah,
have to have people who can meet the moment because the world has changed dramatically.
yeah,
And it's about to change. We've got all of these tech oligarchs too.
oh, yes.
And this is fascinating. And this is one of the things that I've been really mulling about, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. But, you know, when Neptune went into Pisces is when cryptocurrency, when Bitcoin started.
Mm,
And the mania around it, and just also knowing that, everything dummy touches turns to crap. I feel like we might be headed toward, a complete implosion of cryptocurrency. Now, many people would say I'm crazy, but astrologically, I look at it and I'm like, is there a there there? You know?
no,
Well,
I,
right.
I actually agree with you. I think we're probably going to head for an implosion of it because it's kind of nothing and it's ripe for corruption and you know what we're seeing happen with it
And I
now.
mean, I've purchased it before. I made some money on it. I haven't been, but I've also had it stolen. And at the point at which I had it stolen, I was like, I don't want this. I
Yeah.
don't want this ephemeral thing that, hurts the earth and that I can't understand, which
Hmm.
feels very Piscean. Like it's just kind of this like something that cannot be held.
Yeah,
And
because I
Aries
don't know
doesn't like
if
that.
for anybody that's never dabbled at all in cryptocurrency, I've only dabbled a little bit. And you have to set up these wallets and have all these special passwords, and it's all like that. And then people lose their passwords and lose their whole wallet.
And even
It's
if you don't, it can still be stolen. Like,
yeah,
it can still like some hacker can go in and just clear out your account,
there
which
is
is
no regulation
my
at all.
friend.
Hmm.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing, like the no regulation, that's very Saturn and Pisces.
Yes.
So I think that all of that's just not going to fly. I think that we're looking at, potentially like with just, you can't take one thing in a bubble. So
Yeah.
if I'm only talking about Saturn and Aries, I can kind of look at what has happened historically and but if you
Mm,
take all the things that are happening, it's starting to become clearer and clearer
mm.
that it's really like, okay, well, what we've all known, what we've all relied on and grew up with, all those stories and those mythologies have really crumbled.
Oh, they really have, indeed. And
Right. And so now it's like first reckoning with that crumbling. And then the 2026 is like the what's new? Like what can we rebuild and like get back to some semblance of protecting people?
definitely, it's going to be quite wild, but and well, it already is. Good Lord, you know. But I do think we have to look, and this is always my theory about astrology. You know, I think we have to look at what's actually happening, and and start to see things emerging from the shadows of that kind of Piscean energy to see what changes are starting to emerge. And that's the only way to live, I think, and look at it. You know, I don't want to diss any use of history in astrology because I think history is important. We can learn from history. But I always remember the quote, you know, that history doesn't repeat, it rhymes.
Mhm.
And we've never had so much change of the outer planets, all changing signs at the same time, pretty much in the big scheme of things, before in history. We've never experienced that. So just because this one transit brought a certain thing in whatever year it was, I,
Right.
I don't think we can assume the same thing's going to happen. We are moving into a completely different time. Would you agree?
Oh, totally. I
Yeah.
brought it up on my most recent video, which was both Sex and the City and Buffy the Vampire Slayer premiered when Saturn was
Oh,
in Aries the last time.
yeah.
And they've already had the reboot of Sex and the City, but it's the new season is here. It looks very different, and they're
Mm,
redoing Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And I brought those up as like they're very different, but they were
mm,
archetypes of female empowerment, you know,
Yeah.
these two shows. And I think there is something that we're going to see about female empowerment,
Mm,
not looking for anybody to fix or rescue us in any way. Like we've just
mhm.
got to kind of rely on ourselves and appreciate ourselves. Um, and so I think that those are some of the themes that we're going to be dealing with, but it is not going to look exactly the same because the world has changed dramatically. And like you said,
So,
Pluto's in Aquarius, Jupiter's going to move into Cancer. You know, we've got all this Aries and Cancer, which is very cardinal energy.
mm,
It's just going to be a very action oriented time.
mhm.
It's been kind of chaotic, I feel like. And
So
I think,
chaotic.
right, I think the chaos is going to, um, I don't want to say it's going to subside, but I think that we're going to have less of the chaos and more clarity.
I agree. I agree for sure. It's going to start. I always think of it as like drying out. It's going to start drying out the fog, the cloud. But also to go, I think there will be female empowerment. But one other thing I'm noticing, because I'm in the activist world very much, and you and I both look at history a bit and cycles. As part of this big shift, we are also heading towards this Pluto Uranus trine, okay, that was seeded in the 60s during the civil rights era when Pluto and Uranus were conjunct together. So now they're in this what's called this opening trine aspect for the listeners, heading towards an opposition, a full moon. So they're going to start speaking to each other as soon as Uranus moves into Gemini. But involved in that is Saturn. Okay. And so before that, in fact, we've also got Saturn, kind of an aspect between Mars in Capricorn, which is a mutual reception there, Saturn back in Pisces, and Uranus finishing up in Taurus, kind of breaking things open. That's
Yeah.
happening on January the 20th next year as well, right before that conjunction. Oh, that's going to be an interesting thing. But anyway, but it's I think it's good in a way because it's a lot of kind of chickens coming home to roost. And my point I was trying to get to is I can't remember her name. She was on Twitter and I left Twitter and I refused to call it the new name. But anyway, she was a black astrologer who relates Saturn to people of color, black people. I
Oh,
am
Neil
also,
Gray.
mhm,
Yeah.
maybe there's more than one who's associated.
Oh no, she was Neptune. Excuse me. Excuse
Okay.
me. No, I
Yeah,
don't know who you're
yeah.
talking about.
Some have said
Sorry.
Neptune as well, but one thing I'm noticing in kind of the activist world a little bit, just from what people are saying, is that there's less talk of you owe me reparations, you owe me this for what happened way back then. Now, I'm not saying anything that happened back then was good because it was not. It's a terrible stain on the history of the United States, but is much more now about okay, let it go. That's the good side of Pisces, the end of Pisces, saying step up and what can we do to be the change. I'm thinking of young representatives like Maxwell Frost and Jasmine Crockett, people like that. They're not talking about you owe me this, they're talking about what can we do, if you like. So I was a big supporter of reparations, and if people of color still want to fight for it, I'm all for you doing it. But I'm just noticing this shift in what's being said, though. That's more my point, more than
I think
saying it's my point of view.
there's a silver lining on some of this stuff. I think the realism,
Yeah.
where I think there's kind of a getting real. It's like, you know, people, you know, you know, even in my own personal life. So just like a personal example, like I've been very frustrated with my bank. It's kind of like I've been having this very challenging issue. That's kind of like when you have a challenging issue with the health insurance company, or like you're going around in circles and like, you know, they purposely make it difficult,
Oh,
right?
they do.
And so, you know, I had to kind of look at my own chart and say, what is Saturn in Aries teaching me?
Mm,
Like what is my Achilles heel? And it's impatience. I've always been a very impatient person. And I'm recognizing that that's part of what's being triggered in me is like I'm angry, I'm impatient, I'm, quick to temper, and just realizing how I'm just hurting myself. Like
Mhm.
this is not going to change. Like I'm still going to have to go through the phone tree, and the person in India is still not going to fix my problem.
Yeah.
And all I've done is got myself worked up. And so I think that that's when I heard you tell that story, there's a little of the
Mm.
like, oh, this is never gonna happen.
Yeah.
Like, kind of growing up and being like, oh, this is how it is. How
Yeah.
am I gonna work within the confines of what is?
Mhm.
And then, doesn't mean accepting it fully, but
No,
it
no.
also means like fighting the right battles. And
Mhm.
that's also Saturn in Aries,
I
like picking your
agree.
battles.
Yeah, because there's an element you could say of what we're seeing now is kind of the resistance or clapback to the gains that were made when Pluto and Uranus met in the early 1960s during all
Mhm.
the civil rights issue, because all these people on the other side, so to speak, or whatever, or if the sides, but are saying, no, we don't like what you're taking, so we're going to take it back, kind of things. So mine, 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 the shadow of Aries, mine, mine, mine.
Yeah, and also maybe this is where I'm hopeful with Jupiter
Mm,
and Cancer too,
yep. Mhm.
is kind of the combination of the two, Aries and Cancer. There's a combination where Aries pushes forward, and Aries is about me.
Mhm.
Cancer pushes forward, and Cancer is about you.
Yeah.
And like care, but they have some things in common, right? They're interesting bedfellows. Because the Jupiter will be squaring that Saturn in
Mhm.
mid-July. I believe it's mid-July.
That's going to be an
So
interesting one. Yep. I
right, and
think it is
so
mid-July,
yeah,
yeah.
so I've been thinking a lot about that, and I was just thinking about the fact that there are some things that I think we can all reflect on,
Mhm.
where the tribalism, like, it's the extremism is not right.
Yes.
Like, where and I don't equate the 2. I don't think sending someone to El Salvador to a, work camp or constant like, I'm not there that is not the equivalent of, like, complaining on Twitter about, a pronoun. Like, so there's no false equivalency here.
No.
However,
However, yeah.
and is where can we see that the modern family may have been falling apart? Where can
Yeah.
we see that we have emboldened politicians that were, completely stripping our education
Mhm.
system bare on both sides of the aisle? Like,
Oh,
they're
definitely.
right, like, empowering people and re-electing people who were on the take, or so I think there is this sense of like the whole thing has been kind of busted open, and having some compassion for people who may have gotten sucked in by a strong man who said that I'm going to fix
Definitely.
this.
Definitely. Yeah.
So that's where I'm trying to get to rather than just wanting to flip a middle finger to everyone.
I'm with you, Dabney, completely. I'm come from, I was a delegate for Bernie Sanders back in 2016, my first federal election, a national delegate. And and I was in the angry, I'm gonna fight everything, flip my finger off at everything.
Right.
And I just, it didn't get me anywhere. It just didn't get me anywhere. And it didn't get anybody else anywhere. And also, I found that everybody was attacking each other in that world rather than fighting for something. So I think Saturn in Aries is really about fighting for something, building something up, instead and looking ahead, because Aries is ahead. It's the pioneer, it's like,
Right.
yeah.
So I think we're all going to be a little bit more stripped bare.
Hmm.
Think we're all going to be feeling a little bit more austerity, whether it's financial, emotional,
Yeah.
and I think we're all going to be feeling a little bit more accountability.
Well, I
And
I felt I would say spiritually stripped bare by the realization that my actions back in 2016, I'm not saying it's all my fault that Donald Trump was elected the first time, but collectively, that kind of energy that we were all putting out there kind of did not help, and it led to where we are now. And I will say, vulnerable. I felt spiritually stripped bare. I realized I apologized to quite a few people for being personally aggressive towards them, and I've changed because I've leaned in and learned the lesson. And that's what I think a lot of people are learning, that lesson from old Father Time, Saturn. So, yeah.
And it's interesting in times of crisis how
Mhm.
people actually are brought together more.
Mhm.
So there might be this sense of, as you're stripped more bare with
Mm.
that Jupiter going into Cancer and the two squares, there might be this sense of coming back together on
Yeah.
some level. And that's my hope.
Well, I think it is happening. Just a personal example again of actually becoming a little bit more involved in local politics again. you know, we're all kind of speaking to each other, whereas at one point, the establishment of the Utah Democratic Party didn't want people like me there, but now we're actually kind of being nicer to each other and trying to see how we can work together. So just at that micro level, that's happening. So I think it's going to start happening in a lot of
Yeah,
levels.
and I did have another astrologer on my channel. We were talking about Nick Dagan Best, and he has a
Mm.
little bit of a darker outlook.
Mm.
That is a little bit of his homework, but he has done his research. He's a brilliant
Oh,
astrologer.
he's a brilliant human ephemeris.
Yeah, human ephemeris, exactly. Like so when I talk, like, what I love about talking to different astrologers
Mm.
is you do get these different perspectives. We're
Yeah.
all saying the same thing, but there is no way not to have it influenced by your personal outlook,
Oh.
right? Like who you are and like how you see the world. And so, you and I with our Sagittarian energy, I'm Sag rising and she's got a
Mhm.
big stellium there. My North Node's in Sag. And so
Mm.
it really is like we're seeing what can be, right? Like what can be is that we can build something new and
Mhm.
better. And that is the opportunity, like the phoenix rising from the flame.
Yeah.
There is kind of no denying that there's tremendous amount of change on the horizon, and there will be the impact to the iceberg on some level.
Oh, absolutely. I did watch your video with Nick, and he does have a bit darker outlook, and I think there will be some dark times, but also some good things coming out as well. And that's just our nature. I prefer to look at the good that's emerging rather than project that it's all going to be like.
Right. And the reality is like the future's still being written in my mind.
Hmm.
I'm not a super predictive astrologer. I
No,
just look
me
at the
neither.
energy.
Hmm.
And the energy has possibilities. It has some dark possibilities. But I will say what I was going to bring up too, not just the cryptocurrency bit, but with the tech bros.
Mm.
I've seen lately a lot of people acknowledging their very dystopian view that they kind of convinced everybody was inevitable over the past few years.
Yeah.
They're dystopian, like, oh, well, robots are going to take over and we've got to go to Mars to save ourselves. And
And
like all
we've got to have these smart protected cities with the rest
and
of us there
bunkers.
from the outside and
Right, they all have like these compounds in New Zealand, like, so we're all just going to die, but they're going to be fine.
yeah.
And like the more I kind of dig into it as Saturn and Neptune move out of Pisces into Aries, I'm like, wait a minute.
Mm.
This is just the same old kind of culty doomsday stuff that people have been saying for eons.
It is.
And it's just their way of, they don't want to die. And so they have so
Mhm.
much power that they're trying to, they're trying to hack death
Yes,
because
they
they're
are.
terrified of it the same way the people in power in the, doomsday cults, like, well, we're going to all ascend together and I'm the one that can, get you where you need to go. I'm call BS. I'm going to start to call BS on this.
Well, I do call BS on it. I had a little run in with a person. I won't even. It's not. He's not a well-known person who thought it was admirable that Musk slept on his couch in his office and just worked 24/7. And I was like, why is that admirable?
And
You
also
know?
he doesn't. He's on Twitter all day. Like,
Yeah.
that's the other thing is, like, just because he's not taking care of his 12 children and doing the dishes and running errands doesn't mean he's working. It means he's
No.
in the office
Yeah.
playing video games and tweeting and spouting off. He's not
Hmm.
working. So let's not let him lie to us with his big old South Node in Leo in the first house. I've got opinions.
Oh, oh, I
I
have
guess we should be
opinions.
saving that for your podcast with Kathy. I'm sorry,
No,
everyone.
no, 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 no. We can go anywhere on my channel. And maybe it's because Saturn and Neptune are sitting on my third house Aries South Node, so I'm quite prepared to go.
Yeah. So no, I would like to question that person. And also I've worked in Silicon Valley for 25 years.
Mm.
People have a notion about Silicon Valley and there's a mythology that's been built around
Oh,
that culture too. And
yeah.
I have some stories that I could tell. I should start a whole new YouTube channel about the stories that I have to tell. And so many times the people that are crowned the smartest in the room
Oh, they're
are
not.
by far the most destructive, least
Yeah.
intelligent people you'll ever want to meet.
Or at least emotionally intelligent. They may
Or
have kind of,
or even intelligent.
well, even intelligent as well. Yeah, I would agree. I would agree completely there.
Yeah, and so
And
I think there's a lot of mythology that is maybe gonna go bust under this, Neptune in Aries too, where, like, the fantasies about some of these people, the false idolization,
mhm,
and that's Saturn in Aries too. So,
it
uh
is.
I don't know. That I think there's a lot of silver linings here, but we can't completely ignore the fact that Aries is a very warrior type energy. With
Mhm.
it in Neptune, there's a glamorization of violence and war. So
There is.
there are some potentially darker expressions, but I think there's something really nice about them traveling together.
I think it's a lovely conjunction, and like I said, I think there will be some dark times. Of course, we're already seeing it. Good Lord, Gaza and what's happening in Ukraine now with the escalation and all things like that. But so who people who go, oh, it's all going to fall apart and it's all going to be dark. I'm like, well, have you looked what's actually happening? It's already pretty dark, some of it. So maybe look at that and realize that's waking us up, hopefully. But yeah, I think you're right. People are starting to see the truth of the emperor that has no clothes, or whatever you want to call it. I'm not only talking about the Trump. I'm talking about people like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and all these people that have like been working towards these agendas and realizing that they're not as smart as we thought. I honestly, I admired Elon Musk at one point before I knew really a lot more about him.
Think
You
most
know.
people did.
Mhm.
And that's the Saturn coming home to roost. There's the comeuppance when, that's the being laid bare. So I think those who have lived their lives with integrity,
Yeah.
those who there is a there, those who have a solid sense of self,
Hmm.
they are going to fare pretty well
I
during this
think.
time.
Yeah.
I think the people that are going to fall apart are the people who project, the people who, their sense of self is quite weak, and their
Yeah.
insecurities are going to be their downfall. When you
Hmm.
need everyone else to idolize you,
Yeah. I agree.
you
Hmm.
know
I think we're starting to see the downfall of some of them already, thank
Yeah,
heavens.
he still might be the richest man in the world, but that's what my husband, I said something today, and my husband said, "Well, he's still the richest man in the world." And I said, "But he doesn't care about that. He just wants to be loved because he never got love as a child."
Yeah.
And
And
so,
his chart says that.
and the reality is, like, no one loves him anymore,
No.
right? It's like, so I think there is this sort of Piscean self-destruction
Mhm.
that then, like, if you self imploded to some degree during Pisces and led yourself down the wrong path,
Mm.
you're going to wake up and realize you went down the wrong path. If you've been kind of within the higher side of Pisces, being spiritually conscious and like really, focusing on empathy and caring for others,
Mhm.
this isn't going to be as harsh on you, I don't think.
I agree. I agree. And there are many people for whom that is true. And we're going to see them emerging more and more because and in all areas of life, not just government and
Yeah.
politics, money. We're going to see people who are really kind of trying to do meaningful South Node in Virgo, useful, good work in the world, because we can't separate that South Node from all this stuff that's been going on as well. And I also think, the fact that Regulus moved in from our perspective, fixed star Regulus moved into Virgo in at the end of 2011 is going to be a big player in this as the nodes move towards the beginning of the sign, because they always go reverse through the sign for anybody who's not an astrologer. And the south node will meet Regulus in Virgo for the first time in our lifetimes.
Interesting.
So fixed stars don't move, we do. but
Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to look that up because I know nothing about Regulus.
Well, it's the royal star, and it was in Leo, of course, and it is for most of us when we were born. And it was in Leo for they only move a degree every 72 years from our perspective. So it was in for an age for the age of Pisces. The fixed star Regulus was in Leo, and but it's not now. It's in Virgo, which is a whole different um, realm. That's why I say we have to look at the whole chart. We can't, you know, we can't look at everything clearly on one podcast, but as astrologers, we really have to kind of look at everything, not just say, well, this happened when this planet was in this sign in this year. I'm like, well, where was everything else at that point? You know.
And also just, it's sort of like
Mhm.
I'm starting to really riff on the idea of like, what is the thing that we each have to learn? Like I said, like,
Mhm.
I have to learn patience.
Oh,
And
me
the
too, with
more
that Aries South Node. Yeah, go
Yeah,
on.
the more I am impatient, the more I'm gonna meet resistance, the more like things are gonna come up that are gonna frustrate me.
Yeah.
And so I'm really gonna be conscious of not being impatient and letting right timing take out. Okay, so if you can figure out in your own personal chart what the Saturn and Aries, if you think of yourself as the
Mhm.
Aries, you, what is the Saturnian lesson that you are being
Mm.
tasked with? And it's almost like a mantra, like a guiding star
Mm.
during this time. Like that's kind of the thing that I'm riffing on right now is like then, Stephen always talked about you have to work really hard during Saturn times.
Yeah.
You know, I think in
I,
addition to working hard, it's just about working smart and being like trying to figure out what is the thing that always trips me up
yeah.
that maybe I can finally like be conscious about it. And so things flow a little bit differently. And like, so whatever that is in your life, if you need to find bravery or resilience or,
Mm.
uh, you know, I don't know. What do you think about that?
No, I agree, because you can work hard and get nowhere. You can just
Right.
keep
It's just
slogging along.
working on the wrong things too.
But Saturn, I see really as elder wisdom as well. So it's how can I work smarter and how can I learn from the past and time about what's not worked and what does work for me and what I really want to build and achieve in all areas of life. This is, I agree, work smart and hard, but it is time for kind of your buckle down, great work kind of thing. And Saturn in Aries is very focused as well. That's why, if you're in business, come up with a really strong business plan, really tune into really where you're going for, but do that in all areas of your life, I
Yeah,
agree.
and maybe, and like that's the tie-in with the Uranus in Gemini, maybe the rise in AI and
Mm,
using your job like will breed some new entrepreneurship.
mm,
Like that is sort of like looking for the glass half full, like how can I, okay, this is the lemons I'm being given. How am I
mm,
going to make lemonade? Like that is, I think, where we're at this year. And then next year, things are going to be just like taking us along a little bit more. But I think
mm,
because we get the dip back into Pisces, there's that sense of like, okay, I'm figuring things out,
mm.
cleaning things up. Okay, now we're ready to go.
Yeah. And patience with others. Saturn's teaching me that on that south node, I have to say. A bit like you with your bank. It's like going, not everybody moves as fast as I do and does as much as I do in very little time. And I can't expect everybody to, because everybody's not me. So, you know, and it's slow down. And that includes things like my involvement with the Democratic Party. It's not going to change overnight, much as I would love it to.
Well, thank you for doing that work because I know how hard it is. And I did some activism work a few years ago and I was like, oh, wow, I'm not really going to do this ever again because,
No, I
wow.
decided marching and that kind of activism, not for me. I'm taking a more work smarter
Good.
approach to it, So to go
Yeah.
back to your comment about the Saturn, and well, maybe if a few people like me do that, then we will start to be the change from the inside out, not forcing change.
Yeah. And the North Node in the sky collectively is in Pisces. And so that's like being ready to hear the calling,
Yeah.
like really tune into your calling and like,
Mhm.
sit with it.
And I find astrology helps me to tune into that about my role, what I need to do, my part in everything, in the bigger picture and all of life. And that's why I write all the time about what's going on in the sky and why we do videos, I think, because I think we are co-creators of our life and it's how we respond to what's happening in the world. And I don't think the planets don't make us do anything, to be quite honest. So personally.
Now, this is my therapy.
It is. It's my therapy. It's best therapy ever. I
I know, and
think.
I get to meet new people, which is so fun.
I know, because I didn't know Dabney before she was introduced by a friend, a mutual friend, and she asked me to be on her channel. But I think we're probably going to do more collaborations in the future
Love it.
because we.
Yeah, and I'm going to be with you at the OPA conference where you're a peer group leader in October. So if anyone wants to hang out with the two of us, I think there might be a spot left. I'm not sure.
I think there's only one left. Yeah.
Okay.
Mine was almost sold out right away, and it's kind of hilarious because I was talking to the conference organizer and I was like, "Well, you must have sold quite a few tickets already." If I'm, and she's like, "No, yours just sold out." And I'm like, "Oh,
The
hey."
beauty of YouTube, I swear to God, we get to meet so many amazing people that through this medium because the
Exactly.
people that find you are your people. So she's
Yeah.
got one more spot left if you want to hang out with us for a weekend.
But if you're not meant to be an astrologer and you just have an interest in it for personal reasons, Dabney does consultations. I do consultations. You've got a class that you.
Yeah, I've got a class. It's a beginner foundations class. You do
Mm,
not have to have any astrology experience,
mm,
and I'm actually taking the summer off for consultations and doing
mm.
some traveling with my family. But the class is available and it's recorded and I got a lot of good feedback. So
And it's not long till summer's over, so you can book one for
yeah,
after.
exactly.
I'll be taking quite a bit of time off as well because I've written another book and I'm publishing it myself on July the 13th. So
So
there you
exciting.
go, on Dwarf Planet series. So that's
Perfect for Jupiter and Cancer, eh?
it. I know. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks, Dabney. That was loads of fun. And, I love interviewing people that bring in other kind
My
of,
cat.
It's all right. I've
Say
got
hi.
four. I'm surprised they stayed out of the way. But anyway, that bring in other kind of words or slight differences in
Right.
perspective. Even though we see generally things the same way, I think we can add to each other through these things. So thanks for coming on. And everybody, please, please go subscribe to Dabney's YouTube channel, Lawless Astrology, which I've told her before I have name envy. She
Oh,
married she married into that name, but what an amazing name. Lawless Astrology, right?
Stephen told me I had to name it that, so
Yeah.
I honored his wishes.
Well, he's right. He's often right. He's, and his review of my book is going to be on the front cover, by the way.
So sweet and generous. I love him.
I know. I know. I asked him when he was in Greece and he got a message on his way back. He was at the airport and said, I might need a minute to get to it because I've got to catch up. He was the first person to read it and send me something back on it. So
He's such a good Capricorn.
he really is.
We love him. So thank you for having me, Louise. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.